please.
Let us know when we're up.
All right. All right, so let's start with 17M Flex Building. All right, they're coming back in because we had extended, the planning board is coming back in, or they're coming back into the planning board because the public hearing was still open and it was continued to tomorrow night. They are not ready yet because they were, the expectation is that they're gonna go, to the DOT and find out what, if anything, the DOT is going to want and or allow at that intersection for them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we know that according to all these, the way the criteria that they do, that they need a turning lane. The question is, is DOT going to make it or insist that there be a turning lane there?
Which way, going toward Middletown or from Middletown, or?
The two things, there are two issues there. One is making a left-hand turn going toward Middletown. You're gonna have to worry about the being, hitting the back. And I forget whether that was good enough distance or not. The other problem is that if you're making a right-hand turn coming from Middletown, you can't stay in your lane after you turn onto that road. You need to make a better turn, a bigger radius there, and that. And so probably the same thing was a problem if you're leaving there and making a right-hand turn to head towards the village. You can't make that turn either. Okay,
What's the situation with them? Do they have to put the front parking in front or in back of that thing now?
they have to, the reading is that they must be behind the building. Okay,
But
so,
they were granted a variance.
okay, for what, but I think they're still gonna keep them behind it, but they're gonna have some between them and the town road, right?
As I remember it, what they were not allowed to, the ordinance says you can't have parking in the front
Right.
facing the roadway, but they were given that because the back of the building, facing away from the highway,
Right.
is where their loading docks are gonna be.
Right, but I think they were gonna be there anyhow, I think that's what the latest.
But again, they did have, it's a roundabout,
Right.
you go all the way around the building for fire purposes,
Yeah.
fire department purposes. But, they do have parking in the front, that was a variance that was granted. And on your point about the turning lanes, I spoke at the public hearing last time they had it, just the exact same things you said. Sean Hoffman said that it was in DOT and that, that's what they were waiting for.
Mhm.
So if they have not gotten back from DOT, this is.
Right, so I think that essentially because we continued it to tomorrow night, we have to open up the public hearing and then close it right again, or continue it right again. So that's the way it works. So, the terrible thing is, at this point in time, nobody in the public realizes that there's a continued public hearing tomorrow night.
Right.
We just forget about that. In
Yeah.
fact, if I wasn't on the board, I would forget about it too.
Yeah. Also, one other thing that I wanted to point out was that I have come out of Cannon Hill, as we all have, and it would appear that the lights from the transfer station.
Good, Louis.
Gentlemen?
The transfer station
All right.
and Barkley Road seem to be timed up, that they
Keeping
both
the
meet right
sequel
there
for
at
you
Cannon
here.
Hill at the same time. Hey Louis, how you doing? Good to see you.
Good seeing you.
John, you don't have to move, you
No,
can
no,
sit there.
you got lots of comments there to make.
No. Actually, we're on 17M Flex Building right now.
Oh, it started already?
We just started. Just work your way through the crowd.
Work your way through. The answers from the crowd later.
Yes, we just started talking about 17M Flex Building.
Okay.
And it's a continued public hearing tomorrow night, because we did that back last time we had the public hearing. Though 17M, or the project has no new information to report, what we're really looking for is some kind of comment back from the DOT as to whether or not they're going to want a turning lane there. And then the turning lane issue is turning lane on Hartley Road, or not Hartley Road, Cannon Hill, and on 17M as to, apparently we really can't make all the turns you need to make out of there with tractor trailers. And then I think you had pointed out, or somebody had pointed out, that if you're up at the stop line and we have that berm there, you may be blocking the vision of anybody trying to come out of there because of that berm. People may not be able to see over the berm to do that.
again, until the DOT chimes in and we know what we've got for turning lanes, I think what you just said, they'll open the public hearing and close it, there's nothing new.
Yeah, I think there's nothing that we can comment. Louis, anything?
Nothing new.
Yes or no? Okay, so I think that's where it really stands with that. I think, other than that, it's,
Do they know how much parking they're gonna need for that building in the front? I mean, it's a difference between 10 or 15 cars and 30 or 40, I mean.
yeah, and I think they have the ability to put all the parking there. I think the reason for the berm, I think, is to keep, because you can have the parking in front of the building if it's not visible from the road.
Okay, so
So I think the berm is for that purpose. I don't recall it. I know they got some variances, and I don't know. what
They
they're all
also got a
about.
variance on the setback from the highway. It's supposed to be 200 or 250 feet,
Right.
and they got it down to 75.
Right,
So I think that was another reason for the berm, is that he wants to look at it, right?
right. And the truth of the matter is, I think that the property's only 300 feet deep, no matter what.
Yeah.
So you couldn't have fit anything on there otherwise.
I said at the time, and I'll say it again, the variance was given to this building in particular. There was a lot that was given, and the explanation I think you gave me was that these were codes that were put into place after the property owner purchased the property. So the laws changed out from under him, and I get that, but still, it's a
And
lot
the
of
other
variance
thing,
has been
and
given.
the other thing is that those lots were already made prior to the zoning change. And so therefore, in fact, if you go to the other side of town, we have some properties there that you had a little triangle of land you could put up. Chafee Pools is one,
Right.
because Chafee Pools has 2 front yards, 17 and 17M.
Mhm.
So there are problems with that with the code sometimes.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think, well, we continue, we'll wait to suggest that we have to wait until the DOT. Louis, I know, and the next one's gonna be, the school bus place. I know we had some discussion about, impacts, and so at this point in time, if there was a determination that they had to have a turning lane or whatever, there's a question as to when that has to be done, and also who has to pay for it and how they have to pay for it. And I
We're
know,
talking about,
I'm talking 17M flex building.
oh,
Let's suppose, and there's multiple possibilities here. Let's say that they have to expand the width of Cannon Hill Drive, so that there's essentially 3 lanes there. One pulling in, a left turn lane coming out of there, and a right-hand turn lane, maybe. So that way, and then there has to be a radius there that works, that a tractor trailer can make a right-hand turn from 17M onto that road.
they're doing it now. North Jersey Truck and Trailer's doing it every day.
Yeah, but they're going into the wrong lane to do that.
They're crossing over into the oncoming traffic.
On Cannon Hill Drive. You don't think so?
I couldn't tell you. If there's no traffic coming the other way, they probably do it on Cannon Hill Drive and make the turn wide.
Yeah. I don't know how to.
I don't know.
I mean, in general, they probably should be going into the opposite lane on 17M to make the turn, but. I mean,
Or on any lane.
Yeah, so I don't think, do you think, I don't think you can make that and stay in the lane you're supposed to with a tractor trailer. You're the only one of the group here that still drives tractor trailer. You think we're wrong on that?
Coming out or going in here?
Either way, if I'm coming out, can I make a right-hand turn onto
It
17M?
depends on the length of the trailers.
Okay.
If you got the little pup trailers, you absolutely can.
All right, well,
If
but
you
look,
have the longer ones, you can't.
right, so,
But
go ahead.
that's at every intersection. We're not only talking about Cannon and 17M, we're talking about every street that a tractor trailer goes in, even in the village here, making a right on Matthew Street. They run over Soreski's,
Mm-hmm.
all right? So it's at every intersection.
And if you see a guy coming like that, you make sure you stop and
Correct.
back up over,
So,
give him
I
plenty of
mean-
room.
You're zeroing down on this, but like I said, it
Oh,
happens at every
Yeah,
intersection.
no, we're zeroing down on this because right now it's the one in front of us.
I understand that. But they're doing it now.
Yeah, but and otherwise we also know we have a problem at Hartley Road. Make a right-hand turn out of Hartley Road. You
Yeah.
know.
You have the same problem over there by 6.5 Station Road and 17M.
6 in the station, yeah.
All of them,
Yeah, no,
every
I
single
agree.
one.
Wouldn't, could it?
So, I mean, I'm sorry.
Make the road into there wider, you know, so that he can stay in his lane, but, you know, instead of going to the state and trying to put in a turning lane or something like that, just make the entrance is wide.
like pave that shoulder all the way in, so that when the tractor trailer, they're gonna track to the inside, they're not off-road creating a hazard. If that's what you mean, I'm for it.
Yeah, I think at Hartley Road they possibly could do that. I think Cannon Hill has curbing all the way up, don't they, Billy?
I think so, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Which can be removed.
Yeah, no, I
But
know.
now you're infringing on that
Right,
owner's
you're-
property to
you're-
do that.
There's no doubt about it. The question may be certainly that 17M Flex Building may have to, may be asked to contribute land to make this work. But going forward,
You could be looking at that for every,
and we are,
every individual, any property that's, gonna have truck traffic coming in, I mean, just,
Absolutely.
yeah,
so, go ahead.
I,
No, I think that maybe our recommendation or our consideration we should be suggesting is that any intersection that's near or going to be partially commercial, the intersection should be looked at, and if we're doing any work in the area, we should start making the changes now. I know that the town just recently meaning within the past 3 years, 5 years, whatever it was, repaved Hartley Road. And at that point in time, probably would have made sense if we had looked at it. At that point in time, it wouldn't have taken, I don't think, a whole bunch of extra money or blacktop to make that right-hand turn better. Billy?
No, I mean, you're talking about a town road going onto the state road, so the state plays a part of this
Yeah.
too.
Okay, so I did go to the DOT, because I think that the planning board made a suggestion to the town board to contact the DOT about this. And so I went there because I wanted to make sure that it made it there. At the time I went there, there was no communication to the DOT. It was done, actually, according to the town board, it was done the day of the last town board meeting, is when they wrote the letter to there. DOT is certainly aware of this problem intersection. DOT is certainly interested in seeing improvements there. DOT was not saying they would pay for it. So one of the cheap solutions is to start putting stop bars further back from the intersections. Because one of the problems coming, even going into Hartley Road, one of the problems, if you're coming out of the village and making a right-hand turn into there, you can't make it if somebody's right up at the intersection, where most of us would stop. You can't make that turn. I know that IWS, their drivers there, if they see one of their trucks coming in to make a right-hand turn, they'll stop back further to allow that turn.
So why don't you do the same thing on Cannon Hill?
I think that's the other way to do it. I really do, Louis.
Instead of a turning lane,
Yeah.
put the white line further back.
But it has to be the white line and a no right on red, because this is the thing, people stop, they're, gotta get where they're going, and they wanna get up and move that right on red, here comes the truck. So,
Right. On Cannon Hill, there is no stop light or traffic light. So if I think I'm going all the way up to there and then a truck comes, I almost have to back up otherwise.
well, without a traffic device at the intersection, I don't know if the stop line does anything.
Yeah. But certainly at Hartley Road it would.
Which was another thing that Sean Hoffman made the point of. He said it could be a combination of turning lanes and or a traffic device at that intersection, but that was up to the state. And until the
Sure.
state chimes in, we got nothing.
And I think, I don't expect this thing to come up with a bunch of money. I think traffic lights are,
At the traffic light, setting the white line back, they're just gonna have to change the timing on that,
Right.
because you won't get enough vehicles because you're going that extra.
right.
But on Cannon Hill, since there's no traffic light there, and until they decide whether to put one or not, to move that white line back,
Coming out of Cannon Hill, yeah.
they'll stop and then roll forward,
Yeah.
especially if you're gonna put a berm there, because now they're not gonna be able to
Sight line,
see.
yeah, Sure.
It's gonna blind even further if you move the white line back. So,
How about you, Chris thought that the timing of the lights, both east and west of that intersection, we're talking Cannon Hill, seemed to be such that they never give you a break at Cannon Hill. Did I say that right?
Exactly, they meet, when, they go green, and here comes the traffic both ways, and they both get to Cannon Hill right about the same time. So then that traffic goes through, and he's clear, they're clear both ways. You've got a window there to get out, but any time after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, forget it now. You're making a hole. It's just jammed out there.
But that's a state problem.
Yeah.
I agree, and until, as I said, until the state chimes in on this project, I don't think we're going anywhere. Let them come back, and then if we're talking about turning lanes, et cetera. But so I agree with you, Neil, I think they're gonna open the public hearing. There's nothing new, close the public hearing. I can't imagine anybody saying anything, there's nothing new.
Yeah. Okay, anything else on this 17M Flex?
No.
All right, we're going to the school bus, student bus company?
Industrial Drive?
Industrial Drive, yeah. That is up for approval tomorrow night.
They've answered all the questions for you guys?
No, well, they gave answers, not to the questions we asked. It was, John, I spoke.
Sounds like a politician answering the question.
I spoke at the last meeting, they had a public hearing on it, and I'm frustrated because the things like, we're gonna fill every space, every square inch of the property with buses, and then we're gonna move a bus and have somebody park. To me, it didn't seem feasible, but at the public meeting, I said, this is all a you problem. You figure it out. I don't think it'll work, but if your employees park in the street and they get ticketed, don't cry, just pay the tickets. And if you park your buses out there and you get ticketed, don't say nobody told you. But they swear that it'll work. They say they've done it before, and Louis made the point that there's a bus, he's seen bus companies, make this thing work. Okay. It's all of them problem at this point, so long as they keep it on their property, who are we to say? Is how I saw it.
The town can put signs up on that road for violation of parking on the street, and they can be ticketed.
Yeah.
So, you're right, it's a them problem.
It's
It's not everybody down the road's
Right.
problem, it's theirs.
Their problem. To listen to the applicant, make their pitch, boy, I really like these people. They seem like solid business people. It's what they come across as. Great presentations. It just seems like 15 pounds in a 10-pound bag. But again, a them problem. But the board.
But they also stated they've done that at a couple of different places.
They said,
And it works.
And planning asked for video of their other operations, and I never saw anything. They never came in with anything.
But
Well,
look, okay.
What about the bus company on Cannon Hill? They're jam-packed with buses. You don't see cars parked on Cannon Hill, their employees.
But I think they have separate parking on the left-hand side for their employees. I think it's set up that
If it's
way.
70 buses, they have room for 70 employees. I didn't see a parking lot there for that.
The answer is I don't know off the top of my head, Louis.
So I think they park when they remove the buses like this company
Yeah.
wants to do.
And if it works, then it works.
Right.
And if it doesn't, a them problem.
So again, I was gonna go back to you, Louis, because you don't do school buses, but you do trucks. And I think that you do set your trucks up on your lot according to how it's going out in the morning.
That's
But
what
every
they
truck,
stated they do.
yeah, I think that you don't put your trucks that's the parking space for that truck. You put the trucks there according to how they're going out or when they're going out.
But I have a little bit more space than they do.
Yeah, that's
They
my line,
don't, so they have a different way of doing it.
Mhm.
The snow removal will be very interesting. Clearing, 38 buses by hand, and where they're putting the snow. I'm thinking anything over a 4-inch snowfall, it's a mess. But again, it's their mess. They say they can do it, okay.
And they're gonna have to because probably the good thing about that, a significant enough snowstorm like that is gonna be no school, so they have the whole day,
Yeah.
24 hours to do that. or whatever.
Okay.
And they may remove the snow. I know places downtown remove the snow
Yeah.
from their parking lots.
Yeah,
They did say that.
They said they're going to.
So
It seems very costly to do a job like that, but okay. Again, if they get this property for the right price, yeah, and you can afford to do that, sounds great.
They're gonna pave the whole, around the building and everything then, because right now it's just,
No, they're not gonna pave. No.
so they can,
they will go ahead and they're gonna leave it gravel. And then the only thing paved, I think, is going to be the last, 50 feet off before the road.
So,
Yeah.
Is removing snow on gravel, when the gravel's wet after, in the spring thaw, the gravel's wet, you're putting vehicles on it,
They'll put
Again,
more stone down like
oh,
everybody
yeah.
else does.
all of them problems. Well, maybe we'll have to buy stone. I know a guy.
Not a special on it.
I hope it works for them, I do.
Right.
Right, the last thing on this is, last time their traffic consultant brought up that the intersection out there, 17A, I'm sorry, had a large amount of accidents out there. I think it was 20 or 22 accidents within the past 5 years, roughly half of which were deer accidents, which has nothing to do with traffic, or have nothing to do with the additional traffic, whatever. But they are adding 75 trips in the morning, 75 trips in the afternoon at least, or something in that area anyhow. And it seems like the biggest problem, if I recall really, is other people hitting, rear-ending the traffic waiting to make a turn. It has nothing to do, I don't think there was any incident of vehicles leaving Industrial Drive and getting hit. It was people waiting to turn into Industrial Drive getting hit from behind. The applicant was saying he's
leaving Florida and coming.
I think most of the accidents are really coming, maybe, most of them I think are gonna be, coming out of Florida, because if you're making a left-hand turn, you have to wait for traffic, oncoming traffic. I think if you're making a right-hand turn, the only reason to wait there would be if there was a big enough vehicle making a right-hand turn into there, that somebody sitting at the stop line
Yeah.
is blocking it. I know that this company said that they do take big buses in to that first-class mines nursery school, or daycare center, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And they are taking big buses into there, dropping kids off. So the applicant did say that they were willing to pay something to upgrading the intersection, but
They said that, and then they didn't say that, right? They said that, and then they kind of backed up with, whoa, we don't have, we wouldn't want to pay that.
right. But what happened was that I think the applicant said yes, and I think their attorney said, we're not buying everything. Wait. You want to say something, Louis?
Nope.
Right. Certainly there's a question there, and I think the conversation I want to come back to is the town needs to come up to something like that. How do you determine fair share? And what is fair share? Because do pre-existing people have to contribute to the same amount or not? But anyhow. All right. Not anything more on student bus? Okay, the last one is the battery energy storage system over Hartley Road. That's coming back tomorrow night. I think the basic intention is to talk a little bit about the safety and the possible fire issues or whatever. They did present somebody, or have somebody at the town board meeting last week to discuss the fire safety, and it was a wash. It wasn't very helpful.
But you went and spoke to somebody.
I did, yeah, I did. I actually went to the class. The Fire Training Center had a class last Tuesday. And it was aimed towards firefighters, really. It was about these battery issues. So a lot of it was about any kind of lithium battery fire. So they were saying, basically, you can't always put battery fires out. You can stop them from burning immediately, but the potential for reignition is pretty high. They were saying in some cases, even vehicles that get involved in an accident with the battery, it almost makes sense to have a fire truck follow that tow vehicle back to the yard, wherever the yard's gonna be, and make sure it doesn't catch fire while it's on the truck.
Huh?
Yeah. they can reignite almost any time. What happens is that apparently there's a bunch of cells in the batteries. And some of the cells could be damaged and some of the cells not damaged. So some of the cells that are not damaged are still generating electricity, which can generate heat, which can generate a fire or reignite. They had said that it's not so uncommon for reignition to happen within 14 days.
14
And
days?
they said that the record or the longest distance time that they knew of a reignition was about 31 days. 31 days later, there was a reignition because of the batteries. They were suggesting that when there's an accident, and we're talking accident or an explosion, some of these cells can be blown a distance away from the site. And unless those cells are picked up, they are charged cells capable of generating electricity or being electric, and therefore igniting materials. So that can happen in a field if there's a car fire, or it could happen if there was an explosion in a facility like this that blew it whatever distance away. So they were saying that's a very significant thing.
Do they have any statistics on how often this kind of things occurs?
No, they were really aiming it towards fire department, so they weren't aiming it towards battery energy storage. They were aiming it towards fire departments that are responding to cars,
Yeah,
to e-bikes, to hoverboards, to
yeah.
these charging walls, where you're charging within your basement or in your garage, the battery's hanging there and you're charging it up. And then you charge your car up or whatever.
To your question, John, I did look that up, and go back about 5 years ago when these things got really, really popular. I mean, they've been around for a long time, but the rate of instance was very high because as a percentage of number of sites out there, if so many burn. So now these things are going in all over the place. So as more and more come in, the percentage of them failing goes down.
Yeah.
And this is the lithium ion battery. There was sodium ion, there was different. So this lithium ion is the newest. This is the one that was in Warwick, and it burned. From what I understand, the problem there was that the cabinet that these batteries are in wasn't watertight. Water got in, and that somehow caused a short. But so I guess what I was trying to point out there is that I don't know that percentage of failure is really as important because of the number that are out there. It's percentages, right? And you can, a statistician can make anything look good. More to the point is, if nothing happens, you'll never know it's there, right? Because it's just out there. But if something happens, you'll make national news because it's that big. As Neil was saying, these things burn for days. You're talking about precautionary evacuations in some instances. So I have great concern for this site, but it's an evolving technology is I think my point.
Is there any kind of material they can spray on this thing after it has a fire to put it out, or?
They can. In fact, they said two things. One is some chemicals can be used to put it out. And especially in the cabinets, you might use some chemical. But the thing is trying to get whatever around all the cells, because cells are stacked like that, and unless you blew something in the middle, it may not work. And on cars, whatever they have the car batteries are usually underneath the car, and so you have to spray. Somehow or other get a spray underneath there, and apparently fire departments have now come up with a nozzle that they can slide underneath there, so they can spray that. That water, still oddly enough, is the extinguishing agent that they use. There's also a thing later on that they use called a cell something or other. And what they do, cell block, okay? And what they do is usually the fire department's looking at a smaller thing. So they're looking at a 55-gallon drum that they have some of this material in there, and then they put whatever's burning, a battery from a e-bike or a battery from a hoverboard or enough, maybe even a phone. And they put it in there, and then they put some more of this material around it. And what happens is when it gets hot enough, it melts it around there, and the melting essentially encases it so that there's no oxygen.
Well, and that works, and here's the problem with that though. This fire is not your typical fire, this is a chemical fire. So depending on the chemicals that are burning, they don't need oxygen. That's like if you've ever seen magnesium burn underwater or underwater welding, you can have, certain materials don't need oxygen. So you can put out the materials that are burning the wiring, the casing around the wiring. Okay, that's a polyvinyl chloride. Put that out with by killing the oxygen or getting the temperature down cool enough with water. These chemical fires, we would use Purple K or not even dry chem, but Purple K was the only thing. And what that does is it breaks the chemical bond. However, one, it's very expensive. Two, it has to completely encase the fire. If it doesn't, forget it, it's not gonna work. Which is why at the meeting, at the planning board and the town board, the representative, when asked, what do? He answered, we let the fire consume itself, which was the weaseliest way I've ever heard of saying somebody say, let it burn, because that's what it is. Because they simply don't have a good way to put this out. So the best thing to do would be prevent it in the first place, which I think they will get better and better over time.
But
I don't think they're there, but protecting the residents until they are there, if they're gonna allow this, is important. Neil, did they say they have, were they talking about dry chem or Purple K to break this?
They certainly, Purple K was the one chemical I did hear about, and then that's it. And then you're right, you have to get it everywhere, which means if you have racks of batteries, somehow you have to get it in between the racks, I would think.
And if you don't get every one of them.
Right. Otherwise you have this, and they can do. And so they did show a picture of a setup like this, and it was actually up in Jefferson County, where there were 4 of these containers. And the fire started in this container here, but it spread to the others, and it spread to the others not from thermal heat, like we think of a house burning here and then starting that one. It connected, it was electric, like a runaway electric thing. And so the whole thing burned, and it burned hot enough that it burned through the metal containers. Some of the metal containers anyhow.
What was the temperatures they were talking?
They were talking some minimum, if this foam caught fire, it's probably at 1,000 degrees. Okay, if they said some of these can get up to about 4,000.
Yeah, you're melting steel.
Yeah, you are melting the steel at that point. Louis? Comment,
I gave my comment the last meeting, I don't want it here, it's very unsafe, and it shouldn't belong here.
Yeah, was there any talk about evacuation zones?
Beat a dead horse.
I mean, listen, I gotta say, short and sweet to the point, absolutely usually is. I do agree with him. I would like facts and figures to back it up.
we'd like the applicant to prove his case that it shouldn't be here.
But don't bullshit us, and that's what they're doing at every meeting. They're, oh, it's safe enough, it's this, it's that, they're full of shit. Okay, they're gonna tell you what you wanna hear to get in. The fact lies that there are issues with this at other places, which you looked up on your phone and saw how many of them.
Yeah.
And how many townships do not want it. Now,
Is
Tony
that-
being next to the river, or their walk hill, I should say, that amount of water that they're gonna spread on there is gonna go into the water.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what do you do about that?
Oh my God, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, no, I do have that. In fact, I have IWS's thing. Because they had a couple of really good things. One is, if you look at this, they have here on this page, it's the potential environmental justice area and also the disadvantaged community. So this site is located within the.
Down the road.
But this is right in, this is within the potential disadvantaged community and environmental justice. So that may be a problem there. And how's that gonna be dealt with? Next is also going to be that it's also within the New York State aquifer. So it's right on top of the aquifer, and you can see the whole aquifer here. And this aquifer also contributes to the water in the village. So The water would enter the aquifer and go downstream. To the degree that you got enough of the chemical into the aquifer, it would end up going downstream before it possibly even made it to the river. It doesn't have to flow into the river or flow into the Rio, which is also there. And also there's wetlands that are next to this that you have to be a little bit concerned about probably. Okay, the other thing that they had on this, from the IWS, on page 5, sheet 5, they showed the, and this is from Montgomery Airport, unfortunately, but it's the closest, best thing we have. They have the direction of the wind flow and the speed of the wind, which is interesting because that would give us some of the indication, possibly what is the prevailing winds and what direction we have to worry about. Going to your question about the plume. What is the plume? How big is the plume? And is the assumption, maybe the assumption has to be that both would go the same completely. And so how high up does the plume go and at what speed does it move? And at what point does it matter? And certainly that one of the things that they did say was that one of the things they're requiring elsewhere nowadays is some kind of windsock or some way of determining the speed, if you had to respond right then and there, which direction is the wind going, and therefore which direction do you have to start evacuations or be concerned about evacuations.
If you'd ask the applicant to, provide data on weather, et cetera, they're almost certainly going to bring you the rosiest picture possible. It's a clear day, smoke goes right up and it dissipates and nobody gets hurt. But as the environmental review board, I don't think we don't care about that. We care about the worst possible scenario.
Sure.
Because that's how things happen. And
Heavy fog.
Everything
is involved.
Right,
Sure.
Heavy fog's the other answer I hadn't thought about.
I will say this. Since I'm 18 years old, I live and die with the weather, with the wind in particular.
As do I.
And as a hot air balloon pilot, and you haven't heard that often in this room, but as a hot air balloon pilot, I can tell you that the winds going from the site to the Orange County Jail, medical examiner's office, and the 911 center, that is a dominant fair weather pattern. I travel that direction, off the top of my head, 30 to 40% of my flights during the summer. I can tell you that when the winds come out of the southeast, going the opposite direction, it's going to rain, because but if it's sunny and it's nice, that is a very typical fair weather pattern. As is going from that site to the New York State Mental Health, the Medicine Psych Center. That is another very fair weather. Also, in talking, we were saying earlier, Neil, that these fires go for days. And so whatever wind you have today could become something completely different in a few days from now. So trying to keep an eye on that weather, and who's in charge of that, by the way, because meteorologists get it wrong. I'm thinking there's some sort of an evacuation zone. And there are also houses that are right on Chichunk Road. They've got to get out.
They've said, the applicant said the closest house is 700 feet.
Yeah, you're talking about possible explosions and such. I'm getting out if I'm anywhere near. My house is but just over a mile away. I'm getting out. If that wind is coming my way, I'm not breathing that stuff. The other last thing I want to say is topography does play a case. The Orange County Jail facility is on a hill.
It's up.
And so, yes, just as that goes out. Louis, this is a map that I just made. This is half mile, 1 mile, and 1.5 mile.
Yeah.
I also showed, I darkened out Route 17, I-86, and 17M, because last time you had mentioned, what do we do about closing those roads if necessary? But look, before we start talking about that, we have to find out what is the evacuation plan, or what are the requirements for an evacuation, if there are any. I don't know. But to that, has this board ever brought in specialists or something? Look, before I would love for the chief of the Goshen Fire Department to come in and answer some questions for us. The sheriff of Orange County, he's in charge of the Orange County facility. That is a secure, sensitive facility that, does he have an evacuation plan in place? Can it be evacuated if necessary? The head of the psych center, can that facility be evacuated if necessary? I would also like to speak to environmental specialists. You were just talking about the water. I didn't even think about the Waukegan River, but yes, what happens to the soils and such surrounding? And finally, a doctor. Look, we spoke earlier about the smoke that comes off of this. A forest fire will irritate your eyes and your throat. It's not gonna kill you. A house fire, some of the stuff coming off a house fire is absolutely horrible, but it doesn't last that long and you can get out. I'm talking about some of the nastiest chemicals known to man in this smoke, going on for days and days. And so, I'd like to hear from a doctor, what are the effects? And is it safe to leave somebody in place, to shelter in place, if something goes wrong with the facility? As I said, if nothing happens, nobody will ever know it's there.
Speaking on the water issue that you guys were talking about,
Yeah.
I don't know how often you guys know about how Stewart does their fire drills, but constantly they have to drain the Hudson, like a small portion or a giant portion of the Hudson River just to clean out all the gunk that is built up at the bottom of the river.
Yeah,
They come from where?
The fire pump that they use from the Stewart Airport.
so they're using a triple F, which is a known carcinogen, and this has been a real problem. And that's, if I'm not mistaken, that's the Air National Guard is they're responsible for the emergency services at Stewart, and they do have, first of all, it's caustic. Secondly, it's very corrosive. So that's the reason that they flush everything they use, because yeah, the pipe, and this is all very expensive machinery. So yeah, that's, AFFF is used for alcohol fires, alcohol-based fuels.
Yeah, somebody else?
Yeah, I used to live near, like, directly where the air base met the river,
Mhm.
and it, like, the 1 year that they had to do it, it was gone for not even a year. It was gone for like 3, maybe 4 years.
Mhm.
There was no river there at all, and I was so leak, Beaver Dam Lake.
Yeah.
It was just gone. Like, I grew up near that lake. My dad knew that lake his entire life because he grew up on the road that he brought me to, and it was just gone. He's never seen it gone that long.
But I think, and that was also part of their, Stewart was flushing and using Beaver Dam Lake, and it was polluted with AFFF, so they had to drain, and it was a super fun site, really. And that was the US government cleaning up their mess. And to that point, if there's a problem here at this site, I don't know what the long-term effects are. I don't know that the surrounding businesses can reoccupy that site, and how long are they gonna be gone? Because this is some really nasty stuff.
So within your 1 mile, you also got Amy's Kitchen
Yes, and
Okay.
Science of the Soul is there.
and Science of the Soul. So let's just say they have one of their, right?
Yeah.
And you're talking about evacuation.
15.
Jail, psych center, Science of the Soul on a 2-lane road.
With
There
not a
is
lot
no
of warning.
plan about that. It's just everybody's gonna, when the shit hits the ceiling, everybody's gonna fend for themselves.
Of course.
They're not gonna pay attention to direction and paranoia. Okay, so, again, not the area for it,
Okay.
which in your bylaws or whatever you say, they can put it there, how it's wrote in the law.
The law was approved by the town board
Okay,
to allow this use within that area
well,
by special permit. So let's,
all right.
special permit does not mean that you're allowed to do it guaranteed. You're allowed to do it if it's appropriate, I think. And certainly the planning board attorney will discuss that to some degree. Because special permit means that in general that it's a good idea in that area, or it can be done in that area, but every site might not be appropriate.
Okay.
And I do believe that the town board made the planning board lead on Circa.
They allowed the planning board to become lead agency.
Why? They probably had to.
No, the town board almost never becomes lead agency.
Okay.
because it's political.
Got it.
Let the town, let the planning board
A
take.
lot of good minds on that board, yes, absolutely.
And the planning board is also much more used to doing
Yes.
seeker.
Any idea, I'm not familiar with the site of the Warwick fire to the town, how close they were to town, does anybody know? Cause I know it was out by the
Yeah,
school.
I thought it was right in there. And in fact, I think I heard the other day that in fact, the Warwick fire was actually two separate fires at the same time, or whatever.
At the same site, or?
It's two. I got the impression it was near, but not the same site.
Oh, then add that to my list of people I wanna speak to, I'd like to speak to the Warwick Fire Chief. Hey, were you involved and can you get me some information? And before, I know I talk a lot, I'm sorry.
No.
Neil, you said that the town approved by special permit.
Yes,
Do we know if I think they approved that before the Warwick fire.
yes.
And I think they approved that it was 2023.
That's possible, yeah.
Okay. I'd like to point out that, and this is probably speaking to the wrong audience, but there was a time back in the 1920s, 1930s, there was this miracle fabric. It was wonderful. It was heat resistant, flame resistant. They made babies' clothes out of it. It was the material was asbestos.
Yeah.
And later we learned that there was a downside to it, so we stopped using it. This is a new technology, an emerging technology, as Lou pointed out last meeting, and I think it's possible we're out over the tip of our skis on this one. We're making approvals on something we don't know anything about because we don't know what we don't know. It's an emerging technology. And there are a lot of people within this zone. So before we have these answers, my suggestion to the planning board would be talk to these specialists before and make sure there are plans in place for the worst case scenario.
All right, so we're talking doctors or healthcare for the health, safety, we're talking environmentalist and,
Can we talk to the fire department chief, Goshen Fire, and can he liaise with
okay.
at least Warwick Fire? These guys know each other.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I mean, speaking up for the fire department, they are not used to doing site plans or whatever, and some of that is outside their usual.
What are you asking for a site plan for?
The question is whether,
How are they gonna fight it? They don't need to know a site plan.
Yeah, I
Because
just want
that's
this-
gonna require a lot of mutual aid. That's
Standard-
not just Goshen.
no, I know, it's gonna be hazmat too.
And what is
And
this?
Slate Hill, and New Hampton, and you're talking about a lot of fire departments, depending on how much water they need to put on this to cool it off.
Now, the applicant says they're meeting with the fire department,
And
and they're getting that information.
But
I saw their proposal. I'm not filled with confidence here. And you said a lot of water putting on it. I don't think they're putting any water on it at all, is my point. They let it burn.
But so how close is this gonna be to one of Tony's buildings?
It's
Feet.
fairly close.
So you gotta put water on the existing building to keep it cool so it doesn't
Well,
spread to the other
You're right,
buildings.
auto exposure. Yeah,
So
you're right.
it's still gonna be an awful lot of water going,
For days.
possibly, yes. So it is the water, and like Chris said, what about the wind issue? We can't know which direction the wind's gonna
No,
go per day. So again, wrong place, wrong area, and maybe the town didn't think about it before they said, yes, it can be done.
And I'm not even saying it's their fault. They just didn't know because we didn't know to ask these questions. Now that we know, let's ask the questions and pull back a little bit.
How big a structure is the facility, storage facility gonna be?
How big is it?
Yeah, how many units or whatever?
We had the sizes, and they're not big. Picture one of those, they put them on a ship, the cargo containers?
Containers.
40-foot car?
Two of them, 2 cargo containers is what it
For
comes
now.
out to.
Is it 2 or I thought it was?
For now.
I thought it was more than
Oh,
that.
for now, yes, until
Well,
they
we can
decide
go
to
higher.
expand. Oh, sure they can.
You know, if this law passes about height of buildings, they could put, how many on top of each
I
other?
didn't think of that.
They stack them
Alright, but
20
they-
deep on a ship. I'm not saying we're gonna do 20 feet now, I'm not saying that. But, sure, it's already plumbed for it, it's already,
Sure.
everything's there.
That makes sense.
Let's go back in front of the town, see if we can add 2 more there.
Like to expand it, they're proposing only 2 5 kW facilities.
2.5, right? There's 5 KW total.
No, I think there's 2 5s.
Well, then they measure it up to that because it's.
I think it's 2 5s. And so I'm not so sure it's one container in each one, I think it might be more than one container. And they are going to be,
Just literally feet away, and at 4,000 degrees, you're right, you need to worry about water exposure. As a matter of fact, you gotta worry about water exposure to the trees, even though they are far away from the trees, you're gonna,
And you're right there at Soon's, all the apple trees.
sure, the potential, I think, the potential with the exposure is to the residential properties nearby and the business properties nearby and the business impacts. So that's it, and certainly, looking at this, Amy's Kitchen property is within the half-mile of this property. Size of the Soul just gets the corner of it within a half-mile. And actually, the psych center is outside the mile, except that the new psych center is gonna be moving within the mile.
you're right, I didn't take that into account, you're right.
Okay, but it is,
It's right there.
Yeah, the new psych center is going to be within that mile, I'm sorry, not half-mile, mile. And so the jail is
So
between the
who,
half-mile.
so who do you talk to about evacuation?
Yep.
Not them.
Well, the question we have is who are we suggesting that the planning board get, and I don't know the answer. We can certainly go back to, the person who did this presentation, and he was from the state fire, group, so that he's a state employee. It was Victor Groves, who also works apparently a good deal with from the FDNY, with Lieutenant John Cassidy, who's in hazmat now.
FDNY has hydrants. We don't have hydrants here.
They're not talking about water, remember?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I
they
mean, just,
Well, they may be, but certainly, that is an answer, and I know there's at least one community that rejected the idea because it was based on their entire fire department was volunteer. And you don't know what volunteer, I mean, it's one thing if you have a paid fire department and everybody there is trained in everything. It's another thing when you have volunteers who can't all be trained in everything, and you're dependent on who's available at the time to respond.
This goes back to my question about talking to a doctor or a pulmonary specialist, because you're asking our residents, our community residents who volunteer their time to our fire department, and they are fantastic, but you're asking them to sit in this crap for a long time. And look, you're not gonna stay under the mask the entire time. You're gonna catch some of this stuff. How deadly is it?
not only the ones fighting it, the people around it too.
Sure.
And again, with the wind, we smelled the smoke and saw it from Canada.
Yes,
Okay, this is only 1.5 miles around.
yes.
Joggers do that. Okay, so
I think driving up 17, if there is something, I think you'd smell it on the highway.
I agree.
And if you can smell it,
Something's there.
Something's there.
and time distance. Again, if a house fire, if you're breathing that stuff for an hour or so, yeah. Days? No, that's a distance, a time issue.
And there's no doubt about it, the training that I attended recommended that anybody near any fireman within, near a car fire, an electric vehicle fire, should all be having the apparatus on. The only person they said might not be able to do that is if you're in the car trying to rescue somebody, because you may not be able to get in there with an air pack on. Otherwise, they suggested everybody should be having air packs on the entire time.
Okay, so let me ask you another question. Let's just take Healy, for instance, or the Psych Center, since it's gonna be right there. If this thing catches on fire, they're probably gonna tell everybody to remain inside so they don't breathe it, correct?
That was certainly one of the things they did.
Okay,
And what is-
so what about their ventilation system?
There
So
you
if it's
go.
100 degrees out and the AC is going, I'm gonna be stuck inside there with that.
that would be my question to the sheriff. What is the ventilation system to his facility? Is there a purifying system? I don't know, but we call that sheltering in place. And what would the sheriff do to his facility if he had to shelter in place for some reason?
Right.
Is this, I'm wondering, I'm not looking to put this all on the planning board can we invite some of these people in to talk to them?
I've asked him.
I think the answer is yes, we always can invite somebody in. We have no restrictions in inviting people in. Whether or not anybody responds to us or whatever, but we can do that, and we have, let's go back to when when the town board approved this zoning. We had O&R actually had 1 or 2 representatives. Anybody remember 1 or 2 representatives that came here? Because we were interested in what makes sense of this, that, the other thing. And at that point in time, O&R suggested that the best sites for this are near where the end user is gonna be. Remember that?
I wasn't in, I don't know.
Okay. Hey, do you remember, John?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Basically, they were saying, look, if you're gonna need to use it down in the black dirt area, that's where you should have it. Because it's probably the most efficient use of, you take the electric off there and you put the electric right back on, near where the use is gonna be. But apparently that was the most effective way. This is obviously not following that, but
So where's the end use going?
I don't know, on this one, I don't know where it's going.
Just, what they said was the grid.
Yeah, it's
It
just,
takes energy off the grid at night, like battery charging up your phone, and then during the day, during peak usage, it can put energy back into the grid. And I don't know where the grid goes.
the grid goes everywhere. I
Is
mean,
it like
it's
a cloud?
also-
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, the grid's right there, that, the wires that go through.
Right. Transmission line, so it's
Yeah.
O&R is pushing it somewhere.
Yeah.
But it may not even be local here.
Oh, it may not be at all. Right.
It could go to the city for all we know.
Yeah, yep. There's certainly a lot of electric passes through here, just passes through the town going to the city. That's basically where, way beyond this thing goes. Way beyond it is running to supply the city, really.
Really, that's,
I think so.
I
mean,
didn't know
that's-
that.
I think that's
I
accurate.
think the idea is, as an aggregate, we all take off the grid at some point.
Right, yeah.
So, the idea being, they did say that by having these best systems, where they would normally start up, they either put the existing, online generators, pump them out higher, which burns more fossil fuel, or they would bring some other, facilities online that might be older, they might not be as efficient, so this was good for the ecology. Okay.
All right, so, Warwick happened to be, what happened in 6/26 of '23, burned for over a week. In Jefferson County, they had one that burned through the containers, started in one box and impacted all 4. They did air monitoring 1.5 miles downwind, and they had people sheltering in place, is what they were telling the people to do.
Well, yeah, because what else are you gonna tell them? Run for your life. That's not, sheltering in place, I know my house doesn't have an air purification system in it, so I'm just breathing that.
I'm telling you.
No,
what-
I'm hearing
Okay,
you, man, but I'm
I'm giving you what I was told, I don't make this stuff up. Okay, and there's certainly toxic and flammable vapor is there. There is supposedly a guidance document on a website, okay, so we have to see if we can get that. The guidance document from the State Fire Office of, okay. Not all cells get involved at the same time, so that's the reason why it can burn for a week. You start to, these cells start to burn, and then as they consume themselves, the other cells burning. And so the energy density is much greater. So questions are what to contact, who to contact, battery type, alarm suppression systems, disconnects, how do you disconnect it from the grid, how do you disconnect it from the batteries that maybe, how do you keep the runaway from happening. One of the things they keep touting is that this facility has to give the initial training to the fire department and annual training. They're required to do the annual training as well. But that's just after the fact. Okay, so there's a number of ways you can have problems. One is thermal abuse. Stored near the heat. You can, our cell phones, and we've all been stupid enough at times probably to leave it on our dashboard, and it gets really, really hot. And one of the things that does happen to some degree on these, if they don't fail, is that it's an automatic shut-off. When you go to start it up, it doesn't start because it's thermally disconnected at that point. However, it can happen that you don't. So these containers have to be, or the batteries within these containers have to be air conditioned or temperature.
Question,
Yeah.
in the worst case scenario, what happens to the site itself? It has to be remediated and stuff, or again?
Great
I
point.
think,
I would think so, John.
I think so.
They didn't talk about that. Like I said, this was aimed toward the fire department. It wasn't aimed
Okay.
to the other stuff. But yes,
the trail,
the trail is there too.
the trail.
That would come from an environmental specialist. That's a great question. I'd like to know. Neil, while you just said it, I hadn't thought of it while they were giving their presentation, but you just said they have to cool the site down. One of the things I did read is that these sites put off a tremendous amount of noise because they have cooling fans going, big cooling fans, because they're really trying to keep these batteries cool. Did you say the Warwick site is running again?
Yes, it is running again. I don't know much about it. I did hear that it was running again.
I'm gonna take a ride out. I'd like to listen to it, see if it's, because again, there aren't many neighbors nearby, but there are neighbors and they're paying taxes.
Yeah. The other thing they suggested is that there be a cover over these. Perhaps there should be a cover over these containers even to keep them cooler. You have the sun beating down on the containers during the summer.
Who's that?
Who's suggesting it? The fire service people.
So to keep the sun off, basically in a big umbrella off.
Right, I guess under some kind of pavilion or something like that.
And put solar panels on
Yeah.
it.
There's also could be electrical damage from over or undercharging it, or improper charging devices. Well, I remember, there's a thing you can use for cars. Louis, I'm looking at you.
No,
The thing you can use on cars to fake the car into believing it's being charged. You can have a dummy charger that you hook on it, and supposedly that will keep the likelihood of the car reigniting some. You may want to look into that if you get stuck doing these much.
It thinks it's getting charged, but it's not getting charged, so that means, can you still charge it after you faked it out? Or
Well, what they did say is that, for the most part, they think that at this point in time, anytime there's a car fire involving the batteries, it's totaled.
Oh.
Yeah, that's.
That's what they said, yeah.
Yeah.
See, Louis, when you get to a car accident for a tow,
Do you?
we would always disconnect the battery. The fire department would just snip the cables because you don't want the airbags blowing off, and also because of the battery fire. If the fire department is not, first, do you know if the fire department local does that? Secondly, if they're not, do you?
they try, they
Okay.
do it. So we ask them not to, because most of the newer cars are the electronic parking brake,
Right.
the electronic transmission. And once you cut it, you're just basically dragging it on. The computer system, it screws up the computer system. So if it's a bad accident, so be it. Cut the cables, no big deal. But if it's a fender bender with the grills pushed in,
Yep.
that's the first thing they go for. And it's an expensive fix, those computers in there, once you cut it like that. So when we take them, if they're still connected, we disconnect them.
Okay.
So,
This
and
is,
sometimes the fire department, some of the fire departments are really good. If they can, they try and take off the cable. They
Right.
don't necessarily cut it.
right,
That way, if you do have to put it back in neutral, or, you know, again, if it's just a fender bender up front, then we connect it to close the windows in it. Because personal belongings, theft, everything. We put it back on, roll up everything, and then disconnect, just to play safe.
Okay, there's also a possibility of mechanical damage to the batteries from somebody working around it or pumping it or knocking it or whatever. And there's also factory defects.
Are we talking about cars or them?
I'm talking about them.
Oh,
Yeah, there's also, cars too. Cars too, could be mechanical damage. Yeah.
They're as big as you're saying, they are, then you wouldn't really have to worry about people bumping into them. Cause they probably have a big case around them.
They're within a container, but people have to go inside the container periodically
Oh,
to do some work in there, or switch out some cells or whatever, if they're not working, whatever, they may be in there.
Wasn't this up for a discussion or a topic a couple of years ago? And we were talking about how much stone has to go around it for the fire department to drive around, and it had to be with a chain link fence and all that. Do you remember that? And it was also brought up, put a berm around it, so that way if you do have to flood it, it can't go outside.
Was this a battery energy storage system, or is this a solar farm with a battery facility?
I think it was a solar farm
Solar
with a
farm, yeah.
battery facility. And we said, okay, then why not just put a berm all the way around, 8 foot, whatever, so the water can't go out, or whatever they're spreading can't go out and be dispersed.
Right, but, so that, I think, yes, it makes sense, but I think one of the concerns then is that we have this is over an aquifer, and whether or not we really want to try to contain it. We do that with fuel, like if we have an oil tank there or a diesel tank there, we want to know that, hey, if that tank leaks entirely, that it's contained within another system there, so it doesn't just leak into the ground.
So let them do it with that. It's only a 40-foot container.
No, I agree on that, but I'm not so sure.
I mean, I don't want them to, let me rephrase, I still don't want it,
I know you don't.
but if it gets pushed through, there should be,
Containment. Yeah.
Containment.
No matter what they're putting in there to extinguish it, it has to be contained.
There's no extinguishing, we keep.
Well,
saying
what they're
it's
gonna-
just gonna burn.
They're possibly gonna try to extinguish it or whatever.
They're really not, that's what
They may not, but then we have two problems going against each other. One is trying to extinguish it so it doesn't continue this plume going out.
Right.
And the second thing is, if you do extinguish it, what are you putting on there, and how do you contain that?
Hazmat and the fire department have to work and be on the same page. One may
Yeah.
say fight it with water, the other one may not,
Mhm.
and that happens at scenes with other municipalities
Mhm.
taking charge. So,
In listening to the presentation, when he said, we're gonna let the fire consume itself, it took Phil Cantorino about 4 minutes to get the guy to say, yes, we're gonna let it burn. Because he kept saying, so you're saying we're gonna let it burn? So he finally did say that, okay. After a few people from the audience asked questions, he finally came around to, well, we'll try to put it out with water. And the feeling I got was that people just wanna hear that you're gonna try to put it out. When in reality, they've already told you, they're going to let it burn.
correct.
So one of the interesting things, and you kind of hit on it before, this is an they call it an electrochemical fire. And one of the interesting things is it's similar to magnesium and maybe some of the other burning metals, is that it can burn underwater. And in fact, when it's burning, it actually produces its own oxygen. So burning underwater doesn't extinguish it because of lack of oxygen, it's producing its own oxygen, which is an interesting thing.
Needs to burn longer.
Yeah, it does.
Until the fuel is completely consumed, hence, let it burn.
Or even if you don't design to let it burn, that may be the concept.
I agree, and that's what I'm saying, is we have not yet invented the chemical to put this fire out. So the answer is to let it burn. Meanwhile, we're pumping this stuff into the atmosphere and we're evacuating people. That's my issue, and I'm with Louis, that it's just too many people in this area. By the way, if you wanna go do this out in the desert, yeah.
So there is, and obviously the reignition concerns, and we talked a little bit about, Warwick certainly burned for over 7 days. 14 days is not that uncommon. The longest anything burned like this in New York State so far, apparently, or within the country, I'm not sure which one it was. Anyhow, 31 days of burning. Or I'm sorry, 31 days of reignition, when it reignited.
I think that's one in California, that was a massive.
Okay, so there's also toxic gases, high heat release, very high heat, like we talked possibly at 4,000. Some of the interesting releases: hydrogen, hydrogen fluoride, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and they said many others after that. But the interesting thing with hydrogen then becomes, look, most of us, I think, would suggest or try to get to the point where if it's burning, we want to contain it within the container, or keep it within the container. The problem with that is If you keep all the gases within the container, you're building up hydrogen,
Mhm.
at which point it's gonna explode sometime. Hydrogen will probably explode, depending, once it reaches the lower explosion level. Possibly they should be looking at having that monitored somehow. And then anybody there has to be on the things, okay?
And during the presentation, he did say that we've made better cabinets now, so that if they do explode, they stay contained. And I'm saying, why are we talking about an explosion? Why are we even, if that's a possibility, why would you allow it? But again, I truly think that these things were approved before we knew. We didn't know what we didn't know.
If the people who are bringing this to us are so sure that it's gonna work and everything, what account are they gonna put money into, so when the shit hits the ceiling, is there $40–50 million in there for the cleanup? Because it shouldn't go through anybody else's insurance except his, theirs, Tony's, it's on his property, cause he wants it on his property. And I don't wanna wait for insurance to get my business up and going again.
The other
It should
question,
be in the bank, and if nothing happens in 40 years, they collect the interest on it, but the money still remains in there for the cleanup. Because you're talking about a lot of expense to do this cleanup here,
Yeah.
for the fire department as well, which is the taxpayers' money to clean it.
Mhm.
Somebody else's screw up. This isn't a broken bottle in aisle 5 at ShopRite.
Mhm. And also, I would think that TAM Enterprises would want to be made whole, and that is a very expensive site. He has some great equipment that he doesn't want to lose that in his business,
Yeah.
so.
Put 50 million in the account, and then we'll talk about it again. They might change their mind.
I certainly have the bond for the cleanup, fire department cleanup, neighbors cleanup, inventories of neighbors.
But they're gonna come up with a ridiculous no number.
Mhm.
So I don't know the answer, and I don't know that I would wanna open up the can of worms if I had property near there. But the question might really be appropriate to ask an insurance agency.
Really?
If my neighbor's gonna have one of these there, is my
Premium to go up.
premium gonna go up because of that?
I didn't even think of that.
Uh-oh, got it. Yes, go.
My dad might be able to help with that.
If your dad's involved with insurance,
He's not in insurance, he is a remediation specialist.
if you can ask that question, I would be interested to hear it.
But I still have to wait for my insurance to argue with their insurance for
No,
me to get my money.
I'm aware of that, Louis.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, that, look, this is all supposition and may have no basis for anything. I realize that. But let's say that if you were right next door to something like this, and your insurance was gonna say, look, because of this being next door and the risk that you're gonna have loss of business time, you're gonna have loss of inventory, you're gonna have cleanup, this, that, and the other thing, we now expect your insurance to cost you $20,000 more a year. And I don't know that, look, do not, anybody who's listening to this otherwise, I'm making this up, I don't know that it's true. I'm just saying,
I think it's a
the
good
question
question.
needs to be raised and answered. Because anybody within the first half mile or the next mile may be in a situation where they have to do that. Or we're not gonna cover that. And wait for the fire department to pay you.
I think you really should call up the fire chief from Warwick and see how much information he has about the site, what happens, how much damage.
Once again, maybe we can invite him to come in.
Well, yeah.
But
I mean, I'll order pizza, whatever, man. Well, I think there's so much knowledge right there that we could just get some quick answers.
But the
From
other
a
side
place
of that
that it
is,
happened to.
Exactly.
I agree.
the other issue somewhat is the fire department has a limited scope as to what they're concerned. He would not be worried about what any neighbors cost any neighbors to do cleanup, even the site cleanup. He's not gonna worry about that because that's not a fire department issue.
Correct.
I mean, so.
But we need them here.
No, we can get some answers, no doubt about it. Okay, there's also thermal and runaway, stranded energy. Stranded energy, when they talk about these cells that are just, actually what they said was that some of these cells can actually just explode out from an explosion, or in the case of a car, they get expelled from the car. But anyhow, these cells are now laying out there somewhere, still live.
There are little mini bombs out there, is what you're saying.
It's kind of is what is the way they were describing it.
Okay.
Okay, so they were suggesting to the fire department that look at a car fire, and they would get them back to the car. You should go and search the perimeter and make sure there's no remaining cell pieces out there.
Mhm.
And if they are, their suggestion was to make sure you get them and put them on the tow vehicle because they go with the car.
Mhm.
That was the answer, Louis. I realized you don't want that
You call
answer.
that somebody else's problem.
That's it.
That's
Because
what
otherwise, because the answer is, how do you get rid of this thing? Otherwise, you have this cell that has to be gotten rid of. That's extremely expensive. This cell block thing or whatever that I talked about, where you have a 55-gallon drum, is $900 or $1,000
Yep.
for a 55-gallon drum. And that's going to handle maybe parts of a car, not the whole down battery of a car. In the case of this, wouldn't cover anything probably.
You need a shipping container.
Yeah, but it's not even because you can't fit a shipping container inside a shipping container. Right, the other thing is that there's little or no reaction time. These things don't give you a lead time. If you see smoke and stuff like that, there's no, hey, better get that now. It's
already in thermolytic
Right.
runaway. Yeah.
yeah,
I have an answer to the premium question.
okay.
It said, premiums always rise if there's a risk. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
it's a giant.
My man's got AI going back there for us. We're all gonna be replaced by an 18-year-old kid with a computer just getting answers from AI. This is what it is. Thank you.
Yeah.
Would you like me to see if he could come in tomorrow?
No,
We'll get
we're
that
okay,
after
thank
the
you. Okay, there's no, the other thing they,
So, wait,
Go
it's
ahead.
already burning.
it's already, if you see smoke or vapor coming out, you got a problem already.
And you're not going backwards on it. You can't. It's already in thermolytic runaway. Meaning you can disconnect it from the grid. The problem is not from the grid. The problem's in the battery.
Correct.
Which is within that container, which maybe can be passed on from container to container. Because up in Jefferson County, it happened in one and all the containers were involved.
So, with that being said, if it's already starting to burn itself, how are you communicating with the jail and everybody else to start their evacuation process?
Yep, absolutely. And I had that question down. How you gonna contact people? Who are you gonna contact? Are you gonna contact neighbors, the jail, the psych center, all those? And who's responsible and how does that happen?
And their answer was?
I don't know. I didn't ask them.
Oh,
I think it's a question that has to be raised. But no, there is no, I did not ask the question. I would hope that if it happened at a particular site, that there would be a protocol at the 911 center that, hey, if this place is burning, you have to do this. I don't know the answer.
it's almost like you would want to send out them a message like we get on our phones for bad weather or so on and so
Emergency
forth.
services.
Emergency services to go right and ping the phones right
Yeah,
then and there.
yeah.
Like an
Because even if an elderly person doesn't have the texting capability, the younger generation, hey, mom,
Get somebody next door. Yeah.
get somebody next door, blah, blah, blah.
My concern is we have a lot of questions, and I do not think we have a lot of time. The speed at which New Leaf came in, the speed at which they are going through board approvals. It's not like they go away for a couple of months and come back. This thing is moving at light speed, and we are already behind it. So I think the questions we're asking are good and legitimate questions, need to be asked and answered. My concern is that we could have the answers and this thing will be being built already.
So let me ask you a question. It's gonna go to the planning board, you said that?
It's going to the planning
Tomorrow
board's,
Tomorrow night.
they're coming back in tomorrow night to try to talk to the planning board. I don't know exactly what about, but yes.
Okay, so why don't you have them come to one of our meetings?
We can invite them to one of our meetings. I can't make them come to one of our meetings.
Well, invite them
Yeah, I can invite them.
tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night I mentioned, yeah.
Well, they'll be at planning tomorrow night.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't, it's not privilege of the floor, but they might take questions, I don't know.
No, I can
Not
certainly,
these many.
Well, they'll take that from Neil.
Yeah, no, I can certainly, well, look, I know the guy who's responsible for some of it, and I can certainly tell him, like, look, ERB would certainly like to have you come to our next meeting.
You will hear things like, we will let it consume itself.
Yeah,
No,
That's-
I think we're not gonna hear it, I think they're not gonna show up.
Really?
Okay, fire suppression, they said water, foam,
you don't think they'll show up?
here, no,
Why is this?
to avoid it.
Exactly. I mean, if this is such a great thing, then out of all the properties that are for sale in Goshen and other places, why aren't they buying it and they doing it on their own property? Why are they using somebody else's property? If it's such a great idea.
Not saying anything.
Okay,
Was there, it isn't very,
not saying
it's,
anything.
it's right next to a substation, did that have anything to do
Sure.
with it? And I get
Sure,
the rest of it.
certainly that's, some of it has that,
Okay.
that's convenient for the sake of making connections, but they're actually not going to go in to the substation, they're gonna go to the wires.
Okay, so then anywhere along the
Right.
wire would have been great.
Anything along the wire, they can
Okay.
do it.
All right, but there's more property at the substation. So why aren't
Sure,
they putting it
no,
right at the
O&R
substation?
They could theoretically rent from O&R or lease from O&R and do it there.
Oh, I'm betting O&R would say, no, if you're gonna fire that thing, we're gonna lose our substation.
All right.
But it's
Okay.
safe. But it's safe.
Neil, we
So
were
one,
talking,
one of the questions, I'm sorry, is, also, who do you hand off to? Who gets this? Now, there is a state law coming down where they think that they're going to make, people who own these things must respond to an alarm within 15 minutes. And then they have to make it to the site within 4 hours.
to do what?
Well,
It's
look,
I had another way of saying it, but yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
but the question I have is, I'm not sure that
Yeah.
we can expect any volunteer fire department to sit around babysitting this for 7 days, 14 days, whatever the heck the amount of time is.
Right.
And if you're just gonna let it burn, I don't know how long it takes to let it burn and I guess theoretically you could have a controlled burn of the chemicals or whatever. I don't know what the answer is. But theoretically, I would hope that what you do is you show up in 4 hours and you relieve the fire department so they don't have to babysit it anymore. And you now have a paid emergency response team that is gonna control it.
And by control, I think, to Louis' point earlier, you're just talking about keep wetting down the surrounding buildings, because you're not putting any water on the fire itself, you're just keeping down the auto exposure risk, and you're not actually sitting anywhere near it, because there's still an explosion risk, so your personnel have to be so many feet away, and I'm thinking quarter mile. So you're really just hooked up your truck and you leave it. You gotta bring fuel to it once in a while, keep the pumps running.
Just a question, the applicant that's gonna do this, have they ever had a fire on any of their facilities that they ever built? Is there any kind of historical information that?
I think that I'm not sure this applicant has ever done any of them yet.
Oh,
This is New Leaf Energy, and the other problem, John, there is they got a problem, they bankrupt that company, and they just name it something else the next day, so it'd be hard pressed to really get a full answer on that, unfortunately.
okay.
But it's a good question, and I think a little quick research, AI should be able to pull it up for me right away.
Okay, so next question might be, how do they safely transport this container, or batteries, or whatever, after the fire's out? And where do they take it to?
Who wants it?
Well, first of all, there's really not a problem when the fire's out, because the fire has consumed itself. So all you're left with is a molten pile of nothing.
It's their
Assuming that it
problem.
consumed all the cells,
Assume they haven't?
assuming that it has consumed all the
Yeah.
cells. Unless somebody goes in there and determines that all the cells are consumed,
Yep.
that would not be a known thing.
This would be another great question we can get from more FD, because they must have dealt with this.
Hazmat's gonna be the one in
Hazmat's
charge
gonna
of all this. In honesty, the fire department's just gonna be an aid helping them. If it's a hazmat issue, all bets are off for anybody. They rule, they're gonna have the scene.
And that would be Orange County hazmat? I'm not too familiar with how it's set up.
I would believe it would be Orange County hazmat, yeah, which is
Yeah.
literally right down the road. but they still have to assemble, they
That's right.
still have to get the rigs, they still have to, you know, call in other agencies to help.
On all of them so far in the state, the state's also responded.
Yeah, I was just about to say, again, we're making national news if this happens.
I mean, to respond within 15 minutes of something going off, the tones are going off all the time for automatic alarms at the hospital and at the schools and stuff like this. So if if an alarm goes off, the fire department should be, and the hazmat should be notified instantly. Not one individual going there to say, yeah, the red light's flashing,
Such
and
as
I hear that siren.
Such
Great.
as the chief going to see what's happening, right?
Right. Because by the time he makes a phone call now, you're also adding more time for everybody to get ready for this.
I did talk to someone from the fire department who said that at the minimum, it would take 10 minutes to respond to that site.
When?
During good weather, like whatever. I mean, you think the fire department can respond faster or slower than that?
A lot slower. We hardly have any volunteers
I-
now. So by the time the individual leaves his house, goes down to the firehouse, okay, gets fully manned for the truck to roll, it could be a half hour, easily a half hour, 20 and more.
And talking about response times and such, if the alarm does go off, everybody on Cheechunk Road needs to be notified. Get out.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's a false alarm, but if it's something, you don't really have the time. You've got to get out. And how do we notify them? They're not carrying FD pagers, they're not.
Exactly.
Amber Alert?
Lots of questions.
Just lots of reasons to say no besides questions, I think.
A lot of risks that still have to be resolved.
Certainly a lot of reasons to say slow it down, and at the speed that this thing's getting pushed through.
I think that what we really need is a lot of answers, and until the answers are there and there's a satisfaction that the answers are safe.
But who do you want the answers from? We're always saying the applicant,
No.
the applicant, the applicant.
No.
Yes,
We don't want it from the applicant, but that's
No, I
what we
think,
said.
yes, I think the applicant has to provide it, and that we have to have the experts to review it and say, yes, that's reasonable or something.
So
I don't
who's
know.
our expert, Neil?
I don't know who the expert, that's what I'm asking, who do I even want to have as an expert?
Well, as I was saying before, there are some people that I would love to talk to, and I think first it starts with health and safety, and I'm talking about a doctor, maybe specifically a pulmonologist, somebody that deals with smoke inhalation and such. If that doctor comes in and says, no, this stuff is like inhaling cotton candy, it'll be fine, well, then we got nothing. But chances are, that's not gonna be the answer. Next becomes the mitigation, time, distance, and that stuff. If he says, listen, it's not really that big a problem, then we don't have a problem. If he says, no, you got a problem, next step. Now we gotta talk about,
Evacuation.
do these facilities have evacuation plans in place? So it's a step at a time, and I'm not asking to bring in everybody at one time, because, again, anywhere along the line, we have a lot of questions. Neil, the planning board meets tomorrow night. Can it be suggested to the planning board that the ERB has issue with the speed at which this is moving? We have questions, we will do the work, I'll do the work, and Louis will do the work, and we need some time. I can't make this happen in a month.
I think
And
okay.
And this was approved back in 2023, and we're just hearing about it now. All of a sudden, it's lights and sirens, let's go, go, go. Hey, slow it down, I have some questions, I'd like to get some answers.
I think the recommendation from us is that we think it should be pause decked. They did provide some environmental impact statements material.
Ah, yes,
I think that they need to do a pause deck,
don't slow them down.
and the planning board needs to consider what information still is needed that has not been answered.
Yeah,
Based on the fact that you would let this thing burn from 3 days to 2 weeks, I don't see how it ever gets a negative declaration. It's a hazard site based, I mean, I'm saying, if it goes good, nobody knows it's there.
Look, the answer is that if I had my fireplace burning for a whole month, it wouldn't matter.
Right?
So it's not the question of whether something's burning for a period of time.
Yes.
It's a question of what's burning and what's the result of it, what's the consequence of that. So yes, okay, I agree with you, that answer still needs to be made, or given, or whatever, and investigated, or let's put investigated, okay? So yes, I think that there are issues out there still that have not been answered in the EIS, and we need to make sure we have that prepared for next time.
So besides Warwick, the other facilities that caught on fire, maybe we should reach out to them as well. So we're not just hearing it from Warwick, we're hearing it from 3 or 4 different people of how they handled their situation. They may be in a larger town, smaller town, whatever.
Do you think that should come from an ERB board member, or do we talk to chief of Goshen Fire Department to make peer-to-peer connections? I'm fine either way.
I would definitely talk to the chief of the fire department, and he may revert us back to whoever's in charge of hazmat.
Yeah.
Because it's a
That's another
hazmat
thing I
thing.
think of, yeah. My concern, I think, is the same thing Louis said before. Anybody the applicant brings in is gonna paint the absolute rosiest picture. And I would much rather hear from professionals themselves, you know, somebody that doesn't have a dog in the fight.
So that's why I think we have to get a consultant to review any materials that are submitted and determine whether or not those materials are fair.
Has Sean looked at this?
He's got the materials, yeah.
He hasn't weighed in on any of the meetings, I can tell you that.
No,
I don't think it's
I
gotten to
think
that point.
I think the last meeting we had was the initial presentation, which is all the material that they got, and they first time the planning board ever heard of it, or had a meeting about it. They're coming back this time really quickly, to try to present some information. I think the planning board at this point in time, could not, do any real work or whatever, because, it was during that period of time when we're still discussing who's gonna be lead agency.
I hope they don't.
The town board voted at the last meeting to let the planning board be the lead agency. I'm not sure what other agencies are out there still, and I'm not sure who it is.
You said something about 2023 when this thing, gonna get the year wrong or whatever?
The fire in Warwick was in June of 23.
Oh, okay, has nothing to do with this application?
No, this application was not from 23.
Oh,
no.
okay, I misunderstood.
No.
No, the town approved, actually, I'm sorry, the town approved, it was almost 10 years, I'm sorry, it was 12 years ago that the town approved battery energy storage systems.
I think that's too long ago.
I'm quite sure it was over a decade, I looked it up.
You might be right.
It's over 10 years, as I remember, 10 years ago, I had hair. I mean, a lot has changed since then. So, I don't see how I really think we're out over our skis on this one. And I'm not saying anybody was wrong, we just didn't know to ask the question.
So this is the second application trip to the planning board then from these people?
No, this is the first one for these people. Last time we had any kind of battery storage, it was in association with a solar system. Probably on Dyke Shores?
Okay, yeah, did they ever put that storage in there, just this?
Yeah.
Okay.
In all the years, and I don't know if it can be done, has the Town of Goshen Environmental Review Board ever been, or could they be, a lead agency to get all this resolved
The
and
answer
then
is,
hand it to the planning board in the town?
the answer is no, we can't, because, actually, the planning board can kind of punt to us, but we shouldn't be lead agency because we're not involved. We're interested, but not involved. Involved means we have to make a decision in order for this to be approved. And we don't have to make a decision for this to be approved. The town board has to, the planning board has to, maybe somebody else like the DEC or somebody else like that has to. The other concern I have here, we have a conservation easement property between here, right near here. And the question there might be, what's the impact if there was a fire? And even without the fire, just in general terms, if it's more noise, whether or not that's an issue for the environmental conservation land. It was added in 2021,
What the overlay,
battery energy storage systems. It was added 7/22/21.
Okay, there was something said in a meeting that went back 12 years, okay, it wasn't that, but still, 2021 was really in the infancy of these
Yeah.
batteries going in. Really, they only really became really popular about 5 years ago. And they have just really skyrocketed over the last 5 years with installations. And to their credit, they are getting better because they're learning from their mistakes. And no doubt that they will learn from the mistakes made at this site for somebody else's down the road. I don't wanna be learned on. It is my job,
Nobody did, yeah.
you know, listen, I'm here to protect the people in Goshen, and I,
2021, that was during the height of COVID, so how many people even came to that meeting where they were talking about it?
you're right, you're absolutely right.
That was added in 16, you're right, in 2016,
Was the,
was the solar energy law.
okay,
So it was not battery storage, but it was our solar energy law when we went into a moratorium for a while, and then we passed that.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
So that was 2016.
And again, we're talking about battery energy storage systems of some sort back 2016, 9 years ago. So much has changed since then, and we have not talked, the board did not talk at all about it. And
What board didn't talk
the
about it?
planning board didn't talk about it, neither did town board. They listened to this presentation as it wasn't much. And nobody said, hey, listen, there's real environmental concern with these things.
I think that the town board did study it, did discuss it. I don't know that I think they looked into it deep enough, but it did do, they did do some work.
Like I said, I saw Councilman Cantorino push pretty hard just to get the guy to say, yeah, we let it.
Oh, you're talking right now?
Yes.
I thought you were talking back when
No,
they did it in 2021. 2021, I think there was some discussion.
Okay,
Otherwise, no.
okay.
Gonna burn for how many days, and they wanna let it slide through?
No, I didn't say they want to let it slide through. I'm saying the planning board still has not taken any action at all on this. They're gonna have to look at, seeker next is gonna be the next issue. For seeker, is the information submitted so far for seeker adequate for the planning board to feel like they can make a decision? I don't know the answer. I don't know what the planning board's gonna say. I think that's a question. So I think that we have the next time for us to look at the environmental impact statement that was submitted by this applicant, and we can give our response to the environmental impact statement. Do we think that the stuff's still needed?
I do see that as a reactive move, so we're gonna check to see if their stuff is right. And what I'm saying is, I don't trust anything they're giving me. I'd like to get my own stuff.
I understand that, and we can try to gather information as well as that suggested to the planning board that they gather. And the best answer, of course, would be if the planning board got the information directly, because they're the ones who get to vote on this. But lacking that, we can certainly try to get some information on our own. Hence I went to the training session.
Yeah, and by the way, thank you very much for taking your time to go and get these answers for us. You care about the community and the people, and I thank you. And without you, we wouldn't have half of this information. So this is fantastic, but it does lead to more questions.
Sure, what I got is a bunch of questions, not a bunch of answers.
Yes.
Bunch of answers.
They're
I
important
admit that.
questions.
Yes. So I think we have the time to nail it down more. And we have to look at that environmental impact statement. So the environmental impact statement is contained right here.
This was handed out once before?
It was handed out, I'm not sure what the date was.
I'm asking, was this the information that we were given at the last meeting?
Yeah, did you have this one? Phase 1 environmental
I
site
got a book
assessment.
this big, and I just didn't bring it with me tonight.
Yeah.
But yes, I do believe.
Yeah, okay, so that's the one we should be looking at. Let's start out,
We as in planning board tomorrow night?
no,
Or we as in now us?
We as in now us going forward.
Did you ever pick this up from Grace? You guys, they're available. I picked this up from Grace upstairs, and it's a packet of paper this big. They have a whole book written on this. There's a lot of money that's been put into this site already. I got this and I said, wow, somebody's obviously been working on this for a long time. It's very technical, and again,
You know
it's all coming from the applicant.
I'm sorry, this is not the EIS, this was an environmental site assessment. So it's not an EIS. They're gonna have to do an EIS. I
That's
assume
right,
they're
they're
gonna
not
do
to
an
that
EIS.
yet, right.
Right, so at some point, the planning board's probably gonna have a public scoping session,
Good, good.
I'm guessing, to say, the public, what do you think needs to be looked at yet?
And is that the time where we could ask somebody to come in and speak to
Well,
them?
that's the time at which we can say, this needs to be addressed, this needs to be answered, this needs to be answered, this needs to be answered. And we can suggest that they, planning board, hire a consultant. I think we
I mean,
are
just-
gonna, we're
just-
gonna suggest that we need
just to start
special
with.
consultants on this.
There are a lot of doctors that live right here in Goshen, and I'm sure if we could just get one of them to speak on, are there bad effects from this smoke? I'm told there are, but I'd like to hear from an expert.
Sure, and I think that you'd have to work, a little bit, it has to be determined which kind of a doctor.
I'm thinking of
I mean,
pulmonology.
I don't want to, no offense to any doctors listening to me,
Mhm.
but I don't want an orthopedic surgeon.
No, of course, of course.
Okay, so it's a question of which, so pulmonary,
Pulmonary specialist, a
Specialist.
pulmonologist, I think, or a GP that deals with,
Yeah.
basic anatomy. I don't think this is difficult. Look, boys are running. Fire whistle's going on.
all right, so I think we do have time, I think, on this. I suspect we're gonna ask them to submit they probably did a part one, yeah, they did. Okay, here's the part one.
Detection alarm activation in the sprinkler room.
Okay, so they did a part one, that, I have a tough time believing they're gonna get past on a part one.
I don't have a tough time believing it.
I do. I don't think it's gonna go past on a part one. I think there's gonna be something they have to answer. And they may try to do it on a part three, expanded part three or something, or they may try to do it on an EIS, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but you want the full, you want to have a public hearing for, do a scope, I mean, you know.
Certainly if they're gonna, I would think they're gonna do a scope, they have to do a scope if they're gonna do a part three, not a part three, I'm sorry, but an EIS.
Yeah.
If they do a part three, the planning board can do that on their own.
So this is only the second time that they're gonna come in and talk to you then, right?
This is the second time they're coming in to talk to the planning board,
They
yes.
came to planning, then they came to town board, and now they're going back to planning.
So what's the rush? It should take at least 6-8 months. I mean,
Doesn't Tony have to come back in front of the board for a change of use of property?
That's what they're in for, they're in for
Not
that.
they, he.
The applicant is running it through, right. Tony personally does not have to, Tam does not have to do it. He is given, they're giving this applicant the ability to go through and apply for an additional use on the property.
and who owns this facility on the
The-
applicant, Tony or?
No, Tam owns the property, will continue owning the property. Tam is going to lease a part of the property
To the,
to this applicant.
okay,
So just like anybody else going on a leased property, they can go in, they can make the presentation.
but there's no limit on that property, he already
But
has
it's
a
gotta be
couple
approved.
buildings.
Yeah, it's gotta be approved. Oh, damn, it's gotta be approved. This is not,
So what if the approval says, no, you can't put the battery on
You
there?
can't
Again,
put-
we're wasting our time. What if they say, no, you can't change the use of your property?
no, they said the determination is that, you can apply to do it. The determination has not been made as to whether or not you can do it yet.
Okay, so.
This is what this is all about, Louis.
Why would they not allow it? I'm not
Because
following.
of everything that we discussed.
Yeah,
But then we have to
That's-
provide that to them to
That's
give them a
being,
reason to
that's
say
being
no.
decided, that's what's being suggested to be, that's what's being proposed to be decided. So they do have a decommissioning estimate plan. I'm just just looking at it really fast here, but looks like about 49,000. $49,000
To decommission the plant if there's
in
not a problem.
good shape, right?
Right, if it's not a
Yes.
problem. If it's a problem, then there's no number you can put on that. Who knows what it's gonna take? It could be.
Actually, they have site 1 and site 2, so that, one is that, and the other one's, so it's roughly $100,000 they have. Including showing 2% inflation over
Mhm.
25 years.
That's
By the way,
that's if there's the problem, but if there's a problem to do that,
There's no-
what should the bond be? How much should it be then?
I don't even think, you can't put a number on that. You don't know. It's plutonium at that point. You have no idea what it's gonna be.
We don't know it, but we certainly can request that they give us some information about it. And then we should have, I think we're suggesting that this is so specialized that somebody else should look at it. The other suggestion I had thought of is that generally on different types of buildings, we worry about fire prevention, or not fire prevention, fire suppression, whatever. We probably wouldn't want to make this out of wood, but we're not, we're making this out of metal. So the question is, what fire resistance should be applied, or fire, to this metal? Should this be a 2-hour firewall, or should this be a 4-hour firewall? Which doesn't always work anyhow. World Trade Centers were, the steel on there was very well protected. And
One of the things they did say in their presentation is that they have updated their box, if you will, the container itself, that it's supposed to withstand the fire, withstand an explosion, and they actually tested these to fail. They blew them up. But I don't know what those conditions were, and
no, and we don't know. And then, so one of the things I was gonna suggest was that possibly, even though we don't normally bring him in at this point, is to use the town's architect, who does usually plan reviews for buildings. This would be a type of a use, and so of course, the other question is, depending on what the rating is of the one building, depending on how far away it has to be from another building. Or in this case, I think the closest building may very well be the fuel tanks. So whatever that is, I think that maybe it's worthwhile having him review it, maybe a simple 1-hour review or less, to say, hey, there is no current knowledge of this or whatever. Or maybe there is, and look, a 1-hour rating, or it could just be that it's non-burnable. It may be good enough because it's 100 feet away. If I had a 4,000-degree fire here, it's not gonna impact so far away. I mean, I don't know what the number is.
But again, that's time distance problem.
Yeah.
4,000 degrees for an hour, 4,000 degrees versus 3 days.
Sure.
Eventually, that thing heats up, which is, we're talking about
Mhm.
a defensive position with the fire department.
Sure, and then the question is, what's the existing building on the property made out of? If that's wood, then that's a different answer than if it's non-combustible.
Are these two units side by side or on top of
Yes,
each other?
they're side by side.
So while one's burning, what's protecting the other one from not being burned?
The metal, in fact, it's metal. The answer on, the real problem, Louis, at the one that happened up in Jefferson, was not that they burned from this one to that one to that one. It was that this one caught fire, and then the other one's caught fire because of the chemical electrical response, not because of the thermal heat going over. Now, maybe the thermal heat added to the fact that that's caused the other one to start having a reaction. I haven't thought about it that way, but that may be the answer.
So they're putting these in sync, hooking them up to one wire to go to the grid, instead of having this particular unit go and this particular unit have a different wiring system.
I don't know the answer.
I don't know that either.
Can we ask them?
Sure,
Because that would be the
sure.
difference in,
In how much it's gonna run away or whatever, and then.
because you can put a 2-foot wall in between each container.
Sure, yeah, we can put a concrete wall, and it should keep the thermal heat from going one to the other.
Correct.
Absolutely, and that may be the recommendation, is that, look, that's what you should have, is give me essentially a 4-hour firewall or more.
Yeah, to buy time.
Yeah. Yep, you had something?
Oh, I was just going to, sorry, I already forgot it.
All right, good.
What happens on a day like today that rained like hell and this thing is on fire? Where does everything leach to?
I don't know the answer. And
I,
it was really kind of weird because one of the things with these batteries is that water can cause the batteries to react and start. And yet, I know that they were suggesting that they use water for suppression. In fact, one of the interesting numbers I had here is for EV fires, electric vehicles. They think it generally takes 3,000 gallons to put them out, or suppress them or whatever, which is a much smaller thing than this is being proposed.
And I can tell you, we used to put out car fires with 300 gallons, so 3,000 gallons is a ton. And then while you're on it, as the smoke is going on a day like today, acid rain, you're just bringing down the contaminants, and now that stuff's coming down. We're back to the 80s where you were peeling paint off cars. But was there anything else more on this, or are we gonna?
Do we have anything else?
We need time.
I think we're good on it for the discussion tonight.
Did you,
Go ahead.
this local law,
Local law.
they're gonna bring it up tomorrow night, I just wanted to make.
Go ahead.
But if you're done with this,
Yes, we are. I think, anybody else have anything on with battery storage?
we need time, I think is what we, and at tomorrow night, even when you're in the audience, the planning board will defer to you.
Well, they will let me speak.
They let
Yes.
you speak. I can't speak, but you
Right.
can.
Yes.
And if you would please let them know that we take it seriously and we'd like some time.
I think their process is gonna take time. Okay, unless they're gonna tell me they're gonna neg deck it tomorrow, I'm gonna be surprised. And I'm not sure they can even neg deck it, because I don't think it had enough time yet. But anyhow, I'm gonna be surprised if they neg deck this thing without more information.
You got it. The introductory local law for the short-term rentals, we put a lot of time into this here at this board, and Neil put together our thoughts, and was essentially they should be banned in the town. After a few revisions and a lot of meetings, they did release the introductory local law 13, which does prohibit short-term rentals in the town. And the only reason I wanted to speak of this was because there at the bottom of page 1, it's 97.1 sub C sub 1 sub G, short-term rentals are prohibited. Now, I think Rory did this to me on purpose, because as I read it, there is on the second page, and this is the type of thing that we want to make point to the planning board, because they're looking at this tomorrow night. Sub B, sub 1, it says shall require, it gives the planning board, the rest of this is about enforcing. And how the planning, building department would give fines, etc. But then it gets really confusing, because this doesn't agree with this. At one point, they talk about $350 fines and progressing to $700, and then in another part, it's $1,000 going to $1,500. And what I would like to say to the planning board is that pages 2 and 3 need to be looked at in order to make this a law that makes sense, is what I'm saying. The rest of it, everything from page 3 on, perfect. I can understand it. Look, I ain't the smartest guy in the room, but I can't understand page 2. And it's just written, I think in Rory's effort to cover everything, it became muddy. And I know, I just got this today, by the way, it's not available on the website. Kat was good enough to send this over to me. So, by the way, unless she sent it over to planning today, they won't know what they're looking at either.
I'm not sure they do.
Only that it's on the agenda.
Yeah, it is, but I did not get anything from as a result of that.
Okay, well,
Okay.
I did email it to you, so if you have
Good.
time to read it tomorrow.
I will.
Just, if you have a chance to tell them that
Yep.
Chris Healy doesn't understand page 2.
We will let them know that page, I will let them know that some of the stuff doesn't jive or.
Well, this says, bottom of the second page says, conviction of a second offense committed within 5 years. Okay, so you pay the first $350 for the first conviction, and then Well, maybe fly under the radar, but
right, you get caught the second time,
yeah,
it's 700 or 15 days or both.
yeah.
And then it goes on to saying that, the end of that paragraph, top of page 3, in an environment, if it's an imminent hazard, punishable by the same fine as above. Well, which one? Right, it's not.
It would be, it's the same as above, if it's your first offense, then it's still 350. If it's your second offense, it's 700 or 750.
Well, then I don't understand why is it separate if it's an imminent hazard, if it's gonna be the exact same thing?
I don't know.
I know.
Yep. So the bottom line is that the town is now saying they're gonna ban it outright.
Yeah.
But if you read, let's look at it, one thing that they did do is they defined short-term rental. And so when they defined that, they took out of short-term rentals those things that we might normally consider short-term rentals now, or we would call them transient occupancies. They took out of short-term rentals definition hotels, motels, actual bed and breakfast, and I'm trying to remember if there's anything else. So essentially what they're saying is, look, you still can have a hotel in the town, you still can have a motel, you still can have a bed and breakfast, a real bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
But you obviously have to go through those processes that are already set in place for those.
For the purposes of this chapter, short-term rental shall not include a bed and breakfast, boarding, lodging, hotel, motel, or ongoing month-to-month tenancies. So I think that, as you were just saying, those things are available, but you still need to be permitted for them.
Right.
Okay, and they exist right now.
Yeah, sure. We have at least one hotel, we have at least one B&B, we have at least one lodging house. Yep.
I would like to say, I think that the town board did a very good job of listening to the ERB and listening to the
Public.
public who came out to speak.
They certainly read our stuff, but I think the public coming out to speak, and expressing their concerns was there.
Yes, and I also think that in time, should the town decide to allow this, they've given us some time to see what happens in surrounding towns, learn from their mistakes, and if they want to open this up later on, they'd be in a better position to do it.
And certainly the village allows short-term rentals in it, but they define short-term rentals as we would for B&B. It has to be owner occupied, which everybody seems to say, look,
That's,
the things we have troubles with are the things that the owner's not there. And so consequently, if we continue to allow bed and breakfast where the owner's not gonna be there and occupying it, then we should not have those issues, because the owner's gonna be there, and the owner's gonna live there next. I mean, that has to be their primary residence.
and nobody seemed to have a problem with that, as you said.
Yep. The other positive thing, or the one thing that, when we changed our zoning back in 2004, we did get lawsuits about it, and we prevailed on all of them. I think this may or may not lead to a lawsuit, in which case the town could fight it, and I think it makes sense that we would prevail. It's not that we don't give an avenue for people to have these tendencies. They can do this kind of thing if they do a regular bed and breakfast. It's not like we're taking away their ability to earn money off the property. Anybody else have anything on it?
Can't understand page 2.
Can't understand page 2.
That's it. Take it
We'll look
easy.
at page 2. Thank you.
Alrighty,
I think yours.
good night, everybody.